Hello everybody. We're going to do a little bit of cleanup work here in Unit 5, and actually what I've done for those of you that are taking the class in the fall of 2019 is I had an assignment posted in Unit 4, and I think it was actually originally posted in Unit 3, and I keep moving it back, and it's this one here called the Apollo launch page assignment. And basically the point of this assignment is this. As you start putting more and more of your work on Apollo, it's going to become necessary for you to kind of keep track of it all and not throw it all in the root folder. And then what becomes really handy as you start taking class after class where you're creating web content is to create separate folders for all of your classes in Apollo. So like when you get to the PHP class or the JavaScript class or Web Programming 2 after you take Web Programming 1, it's really kind of nice to have them all in their own folders. So then it also becomes nice if you're putting all that work on Apollo to create kind of like a home page for yourself, and I call it more of a launch page because I'm not really looking for anything fancy. It's really more of a kind of like creating almost a catalog or an index for your work on Apollo. And then what I recommend is whatever you do on Apollo, that you have a folder structure on your local machine that basically mimics what you have on Apollo. It really makes FTPing a whole lot easier. So here's where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with file management. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my file folder here. I'm going to pull one up. And as if you've been following along, I've been storing stuff in my Google Drive. And I have a memory resident version of it running here. And then every time I teach a class like this, I create a folder for it, right? And so all my Web 1 work is inside this folder. What you guys might actually choose to do on your machine, I don't know how you're organizing your stuff on your own machines, that's really kind of up to you. But what I do see some people doing is something like this, and I'm just demonstrating now. So you might have in your documents folder or wherever you store stuff, you might have a gateway folder. And then we had an assignment earlier where we were kind of recommending, well, create a folder structure for like web orientation, create one for Web Programming 1. And now I'm going to get you to think here really carefully. You might actually consider putting all of your Apollo work all in the same folder. So here's what I'm going to do just to demonstrate. I'm actually going to create a folder here under my gateway account and just call it Apollo. So my goal would be that whatever I put in this folder will be the exact same things that I put on Apollo, so I'll have a complete mirror on my own machine of whatever is on Apollo. Same folder structure, same organization, makes it a lot easier, to do that FTP piece. Now, I've already done some work in my Google Drive, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a second window here. So this is my Google Drive. I'm going to go back to Web Programming 1. Oops, that's Java, sorry. I saw the 1 and clicked on it, and there's my fall folder. And this is the stuff I've been doing so far. Now that zip file, that was just an example, but I'm just going to take these three folders that I've created so far, and I highlighted all three of them. And for those of you, into the keyboard shortcut thing, I clicked on the first one to highlight it, hold down the Shift key, press the arrow down key twice. I don't know if you guys know that trick or not, but there it is. Then I'm going to do Control C to copy, and then I'm going to go back to my Apollo folder. I'm going to go into it. I'm going to paste that stuff in. All right, so now I have those folders there. Now, from here on in, it's probably smart of me to keep doing all my work here, just so you know. However, I don't prefer to work that way. And the only reason why, and let me just explain really carefully, is because my local copy that's in my Google Drive is also in the cloud. And that gives me this peace of mind that if I do some work on my own machine and I'm saving it, apparently locally, it's still going to the cloud. So somebody walks up, I go to the bathroom, somebody walks up, grabs my laptop and runs. All right, well, they got the laptop, they don't have my class. Well, they do, but, they're still there. I didn't lose my work. So that's the one reason why you might want to consider using a cloud mechanism of some sort. But I'm doing this for demonstration's sake. So here in FileZilla, I'm now going to connect to Apollo. So if you guys remember the technique here, apollo.gtc.edu, put in your username, and now I'm going to use folks, one of my junk accounts, so please keep that in mind. And I'm trying to remember what stuff I have in here. Okay, so I have all this stuff in here. All right. Now you notice I have a whole bunch of classes in there already. And you know, I don't kind of want to get rid of this stuff. I have kind of like this whole folder structure going. But you know what? I want to try to do that mimicking effect that I was talking about. So on the left-hand side here, I'm going to find my gateway account that I created and then the Apollo folder. And I go in there and I'm like, wait, well, these are Web 1 classes, right? Or folders. That doesn't look at all like this. So one mistake or issue that happens with students a lot is because you're working with different folder structures on both sides, you get confused about where things are ending up. So that's why I give you this tip. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump back to my local file system here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a folder with the same name that I have there, Web 1, all lowercase. So one new folder, Web 1, all lowercase, no spaces. That's my convention, and I think it's a really good one. Most web developers tend to use that. Then I'm going to take those 3 folders that I moved over and drag them in to Web 1. So there it goes. All right. So now I come back over here to FileZilla. I'm going to right-click in this lower left box, and I'm going to do a refresh, and I'll see the new structure. So if I go into Web 1, I have my unit folders. Over in Apollo, I'm not sure what I have. Now, you guys have to keep in mind, I've taught this class many times. I'm not even sure what's in that Web 1 folder at this point, so I'm just going to click, oh, wow, okay, that is from this semester. I see the timestamp here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sync these folders up. So I'm going to go ahead and just highlight all of these on the left-hand side and drag them over and just drop them. And then, well, it is recognizing it. It's like, hey, wait a second, you already have a Unit 2 stuff with Unit 2 stuff in it? You sure you want me to overwrite that? You know, I'm going to actually tell it to overwrite at this point, and it's going to ask me for each individual file, right? So I'm going to click always use this action and apply to current queue only, meaning the current file transfer only. And that way I know whatever I did on my local machine is now going to be up on the web. Okay, so now that folder structure is replicated. What you might want to do is if you have multiple classes already set, see now I'm navigating back to the root of Apollo and back to the root of Apollo on my local machine. If I have other stuff already sitting there, like I got advanced PHP, images, old stuff, Web 2, WordPress I'm not going to move because it's really big. And then I got these couple of extra files in here. You know what? I'm going to drag those all back over to my local machine. It's going to take a minute or two. But now what I have is a replica on my local machine of everything that's on Apollo. So you can go both ways on it. You don't have to just upload, by the way. So I'm letting it do the work. The only thing I'm not moving over is my WordPress folder. And that's like a separate thing. When you guys get farther along in the program, you learn how to use content management systems for doing web work. And you can see, because I obviously have a lot of files in there for some reason, probably a whole lot more than you guys do. It's taken a while. In fact, it looks like it's about 500-600 files. All right. But now, when I look here, I'm in my Apollo folder. Now, with the exception of that WordPress folder, I have a complete replica side to side of whatever is on my local machine is also on Apollo. All right. Here's my next task. I'm going to go to Dreamweaver. That's the program that I've been using to do my work. And I know that I have all this stuff open right now. And in Dreamweaver, and there are programs that have similar constructs like this. They sometimes allow you to create what they call site definitions. This is not something that you'll have in a lower end program like Notepad++. I think if you move up to like PHP Storm or brackets. I don't know if they allow you to create site definitions, but you certainly can work off of certain folder areas. But in Dreamweaver, what we normally do is you create site definitions. So I'm going to go to my Manage Sites here, and I'm going to create a new site, and I'm going to call it Apollo Example, just for the sake of example. And then I'm going to choose on my local machine the folder that I just created for Apollo as the root locally. Okay? All right. The other thing that I'm going to do in there is I'm going to preset, and this is a feature of Dreamweaver and higher end programs. I can actually preset an FTP server right inside this program, so every time I hit save, it automatically uploads it to Apollo. That's really cool, right? Here's a really cool thing. FTP is built into Notepad++, you guys. FTP is built into most of those good programs. I'm not going to go that step right now because I am going to use FileZilla to do the work. But at least now I have this site definition, right? And when I come back inside here, I can actually choose. Oh, I didn't save it, did I? Darn it. Okay. We're going to do that step one more time. Remember to click save. I thought I clicked save. Didn't I click save? Thank you for supporting me, class. All right, select the folder, and I'm clicking save. All right, there we go. So now it's chronicling everything that's in there. All right, very good. So I'm done. And then when I come over here, now Apollo will load up all the stuff that's inside there. All right, back over to my FileZilla. I'm just taking a look here. I noticed that I have an index file right in the root here. And my suspicion is this is my old launch page. And I'm going to go ahead and open that up in my editor now. So what I'd like you to do, for those of you that haven't done this yet, is in the root of your Apollo folder locally, is create an index.html page. That page will be your launch page, and that one will allow you to link to all the different stuff that you're putting into Apollo. It's going to be your launch point. So I'll show you how that works here in just a moment. All right. So, this is that example we did week 1, right? All right. Well, you know what? I'm just going to leave it alone, except I'm going to change the code. And I'm going to create a proper HTML document. So I'm going to do, how do I do doc type? Like this, right? All caps, lowercase, doesn't matter. All caps, somebody said.
It could be capitalized or lowercase.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. All right, just so you know. All right, what else do I have to put in here? How about the head section, right? Oh, I forgot the HTML thing. That kind of helps. HTML, what else? All right, this is kind of cumbersome. You know, I always forget what I'm doing, so you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I quit. All right, I'm going to come back over here. Watch what I do here, and I want to show you one of the advantages of working with the higher end tools. I'm actually going to delete this file. Yes, I want to delete it. And then I'm going to let Dreamweaver help me create a new file, and I want to show you the advantage of a powerful tool. Okay, so I'm coming in here. I'm using the new file dialog. I'm going to choose HTML. And I'm going to choose doc type HTML5. It's got a Bootstrap tab. I'm not going to use Bootstrap. I'm not going to include a pre-built layout. I really want to keep it basic. Do I want to put a title in? Sure. Ties launch page. Look, I can attach CSS, but I'm not worried about any of that stuff right now. I just want to create a basic document, so I'm going to click Create. And then boom, it does all the nitty-gritty framework stuff for me automatically. Now here's a tip for you guys. Every time you're going to build an HTML page from scratch, this stuff should always be there, regardless.
There's a shortcut on VS Code I want to just drag HTML5 on tab, create folder.
Yeah, and Joe's pointing out that in Visual Studio Code, there's a shortcut key for creating pretty much the same thing. All the better tools will have an automatic for this. What I always recommend is if you have a tool that isn't doing that for you, that you take a format like this and save it as a template, and every time you start a file, you can just pull it in and start dropping your stuff in. That way you don't forget what to do. You get to memorize this stuff over time though, just fair warning. I'm going to go ahead and choose a save as on this to get it saved right away, because that's the first thing you should do whenever you create a file. I am going to store it in the root here as index.html. All right? So I just basically recreated what I had, but now the structure's there. Now, here's what I want to do inside this program. I don't really need to do anything fancy. I'm not looking for CSS or colors or images or graphics or any of that kind of stuff. I just want a list of links to all of your work. Right? It's for your benefit and for mine, and I'll explain why as we go. So the first thing I'm going to start with is I'm going to start with an H2. I think H1s are generally too big. That's just my opinion. And I'm just going to put my name in there. Ties launch page. In fact, I might even say Apollo. Next thing I want to do is I want to create a list of links. So here's how I'm thinking. All right? I'm thinking, well, you know, stuff's kind of broken up into unit folders or class folders and then unit folders. And so I might actually create maybe a little bit of a heading element here. And I'm going to go with an H3. And I'm going to say Web Programming 1. Then I want to start breaking it down into categories. So I might add another little tidbit here. Maybe this will just be a paragraph. And I'll say, I think my first piece of example here, I think it was Unit 2, right? That's where we first started really coding. And then underneath there, I'm thinking I'm going to go with an unordered list. And I'm going to start adding list items. And you know, frankly, I don't even remember what's in these folders, but I'm going to take a look. So I did a index page. You know what? Basically, it was just a Unit 2 thing. I'm just going to link to the index page. So I'm going to create a thing here, a link. Here. So here's my anchor tag. I'm going to do my href. I'm going to go ahead and browse. See how Dreamweaver helps me find it? Helps me build my link. Otherwise, you got to type that all in. And then I'm going to put in what I want to say. Unit 2, I think HTML basics or something like that, we called it. All right. And then I'm going to create another paragraph. And I'm going to do Unit 3. I'm going to use the same structure again. It's another unordered list. Why not copy paste? Except this time I'm going to go to Unit 3, and once again I basically have the same structure, so really all I need to change is that 3. How do you like that? And I'm going to call this one Unit 3 Examples. Now for you guys, if you guys are building Fish Creek each week, or Java Jam, or if you try one of the other ones, you might also have folders inside these folders for each one of those. What I'll do is I'll copy in a folder, and I'm also going to use this as an example for what those things should be looking like at this point. I don't know if you guys have figured that out yet. I mean, the book kind of shows you. But let's go ahead and save this work, and then I'm going to go ahead and upload it to Apollo. I'm going to use FileZilla to do it. So I'm going to just make sure, is this the right file? Let's see, 1044 on 1018. Yeah, that looks like about the right time. Actually, let me refresh that. That seems kind of old. Oh no, there's 1055. That's the right timestamp. I'm going to take that index file and I'm going to drag it over to Apollo, And notice I'm not dragging it on top of a folder. If I drag it on top of a folder, it'll go into the folder. I'm going to the bottom part, and then yes, it's going to ask to overwrite. I'm going to say OK. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to my browser. Let's take a look at what this actually looks like. I'm trying to find a browser here that's in front of me, not on the other screen. And so the URL, of course, to get there is this. It's going to be apollo.gtc.edu, that tilde, your username, and for me it's all A's. It's my junk account on Apollo, by the way. And then, do I need to type anything else? Here's the answer to that. No, because I have an index.html in there, I don't have to type index.html. It's automatic. That's what it will look for. So that's all I need to type. So when you submit a link for your launch page assignment, just come up here, Control C, that's your link. If you're working, and I want to demonstrate this, if you're working and looking at a local version of it, so if I like double click this one and it opens up in my browser, do you guys see like how this says file :ccc users tachus documents? That's pointing to my local file system. If you submit that link to me for any assignment, guess what's going to happen? I'm rejecting your assignment. You're getting a 0 until you fix it. Because that points to your local file system that I do not have access to. It's got to be a link on Apollo. So far you guys have been pretty good about that, but inevitably somebody will make that mistake because you're looking at a local version and you copy that URL. Don't copy that URL. That's my tip. This is the URL that you want. Same content. Now, let's make sure that this works. So I'm just going to click on the Unit 2 link. Is this what I did in Unit 2? Yep, that's what I did in Unit 2. All right, let's go back. Let's go to Unit 3. Is this what I did in Unit 3? Yes. Right, this stuff looks familiar, right? This is about, so you can see the progression. And that's kind of the point of the launch page, is because as you keep working through each unit, and whether you're working on your own personal project or a Java Jam or a Fish Creek, if you start putting everything in separate folders and then linking it up to your launch page, then you also have kind of like an index of all your work. And I think that's really cool. And if you're smart as a student, you'll keep this launch page going all the way through your degree program, and then when you get done, you kind of almost have a portfolio built. Hint, hint. Which becomes very useful when you start looking for work, because what you can possibly do is like, hey, I'm learning this stuff, but here's a link to like all my schoolwork. Boom, one link, and you can give them all of it. See the advantage? It's also useful for you because you're keeping track and chronicling it all. So let's go ahead and, for the sake of it, I'm going to find examples of Java Jam and Fish Creek, and I'm going to give you, folks, examples of Chapter 4 completed versions. Does that sound pretty reasonable? All right, so I somewhere inside here, yeah, I have all the answers, believe it or not. Yeah, you guys aren't supposed to ever see this. See how many folders deep I have to go? All right. So I'm looking, you know what, let's do, I'm going to grab, well, I have to do these one at a time. All right. Chapter 4. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go to my local folder. Web 1. Was that Unit 4 or Unit 3? I don't even remember which one covered which chapter. I think so. Unit 4 covered Chapter 4. Is that right? Just have to make sure, yeah. Unit 4 is Chapter 4. So in Unit 4, I'm going to paste in. Well, now I'm noticing I got all that stuff is sitting in the root. That's not good either, is it? No. I'm going to go ahead and paste that one in. and I'm going to rename it. So I'm going to rename it to, oops, Fish Creek. But then I'm also going to create a new folder for all my personal work. So I don't know, what should I call it? Mr. Robot? Seems to make sense to me. I'm going to go Mr. Dash Robot. And then I'm going to move all my Mr. Robot stuff, all this stuff. Now, the way I'm doing this multiple selection, by the way, if you're wondering, is I'm holding down the control key while I click the mouse on each file and it selects all of them. And then I'm just going to drag and drop them into Mr. Robot. Let's also go back and get Java Jam. Oh, that was Java Jam. Okay, oops. Let's rename that then to the correct thing. And you know, since I'm going through the trouble, let's go Java Dash Jam. I think that looks a little nicer. Notice no spaces in my file names or folder names. Not a good practice. All right, I'm going to go back up and get Fish Creek, Chapter 4. All right, just checking it. All right. Copy. Back over to my folder. Paste. So this is me pretending to have done all that work. I'm just going to call it Fish Creek. All right. Now I'm going to go down to FileZilla, and I know that I've done some alterations in Unit 4. So I'm going to open up Unit 4 on both sides and then get them to match up. I'm going to start by doing this, and this is, you know, kind of a primitive approach. I'm going to do everything that's on the right side on the remote server. I'm going to blow it away right now and then re-upload it. So I'm just going to do Control A while I'm in the lower window, and then I'm just going to press delete. And it says, do you want to delete all that? Yep, I'm deleting all of it. Boom, it's gone. Here's a problem with remote servers though, web servers. Once you delete it, there's no recycle bin. It's not coming back. All right, so just understand that. So if you're ever not sure that you really want to delete it, one strategy you could use is just to make a folder and throw it in there. That's why I have a folder called old stuff, because I'm not sure I want to delete it, so just throw it in there. At least you can pull it back. Yeah, once you delete it on the server, gone. Sorry folks, no rescue. All right, now I'm going to come back over here, hold down Control, click each folder, drag and drop it over, release, all the files uploaded. Now I'm going to go back to Dreamweaver, and I'm going to link all that stuff up here on my page. I'm going to keep copying my layout because I think it looks okay. All right, this one's going to be called Unit 4. But these links aren't going to be right, are they? Well, first of all, I know it's Unit 4. And see, this having a little folder thing on the side is helpful. And also, there's no index in Unit 4 at all, so I have to actually add another folder here. So let's link up Mr. Robot first, like so. And then I'm going to just kind of keep creating links here. So I'm going to copy all that, paste it back in, and now all I should have to do is just change it to Fish Creek. I do want to change the link text too. I guess I'm forgetting to do that. And then right here, change it to Java Jam. All right. Then we better change this stuff too. So first link will be Mr. Robot, Fish Creek, and I'm going to actually say Chapter 4, and then Java Jam Chapter 4. I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to go back to FileZilla. I'm going to go back to the root, and notice what I'm doing is, as I navigate on one side, I navigate on the other side, so I end up in the same spot. And you guys notice that the dot dot up here is the thing that takes you, so if you're in a folder, dot dot, you double click it takes you up a level. Right? Some of you usually will go up here, but that's what the dot dot means. Go up one level. Okay. So this is the file I just updated, the launch page in the root. I'm going to move that over to replace the existing one. Yes, I'm going to overwrite. I'm going to go back to my browser, and I'm going to close my local version, and I'm just going to refresh. All right, so now I have my other links listed there. All right, so those of you that have been wondering what your homework should look like, right? And are like, is he ever going to give us the solutions, right? Here's how I'm giving you the solutions. Now you guys have to know how to go to my launch page to get them. That's your challenge. All right, so let's take a look at Java Jam first, because that is kind of considered the preeminent one. So when you're done with chapter 4, this is what your work should look like. Okay? And I forget how much of this they had you build out. You go to menu, music, and jobs. Okay, that one's not created yet, right? That's okay, don't worry about it. That will get built. Now here's the beauty of this, folks. If you want to see what the correct code is, what do? Right-click, view source, right. And you know what? Here's your answers. This is, based on the instructions that the book is giving you, this is what you should be creating. Now, if you've turned something in, and when you start putting your CSS on there and the stuff's not looking quite like it is in the book, it's going to be on you to come in here and double check this, make the corrections, and if you re-upload it, if you submitted it on time and you fix it, I will give you all the points after you fix it. You guys hearing me? Yeah. Okay. If it was late, the late penalties still apply, but ultimately I do want you to fix it, because as our CSS gets more complicated, stuff will just not work right if your code isn't correct underneath. HTML, this is a really important concept, folks. The HTML on our page creates the content and the structure. If we don't have a good structure, we cannot make it look as pretty as we want. We can't control it the way we want. So come in here, do a right-click, view source, check to see that it's laid out like this. Now this version here doesn't have a lot of indents and stuff, but all the code is there. And if you look really carefully at this, the author is following all the conventions they're talking about in the book. So we got our doc type, HTML, there's our head tag, where does it close? Right here. Here's where the body starts, here's where the wrapper starts, you know, etc. Okay, so it's a well-formed page, and you can do that with each one of the pages on here to see the code. But this is what it should look like after chapter 4. Notice the box shadow around the edges. They got that like kind of goofy looking background with the lines going sideways. Some of you have been commenting to me like, where do I get the images from? Okay, if you missed that little piece of lecture, here's where you get the images from. You go to the resources page of our course shell, and then I had updated them last week. So if you came late, you maybe didn't hear it, but these zip files here contain all the images, audio, and video that you need for all the case studies all the way through the book. So if you decide to just work on Fish Creek and Java Jam, and most students do, there you go. As we start going into the later chapters when we do the case studies, I start giving you the option. You can do any one of the 4. But if you decide all of a sudden in chapter 5 to start doing Pacific Trails, you got to go back to the beginning of the book and build it all the way through to get to that point. All right, that's the only difficulty. But you know what? If you want practice, there you go. And you know what? A lot of the structures all start out the same. Then they start to diverge as we do different layouts. And the whole reason the author does that is to show you different ways to do similar things, to get different looks from kind of the same code. All right. Let's take a real quick look then also at Fish Creek. So I'm going to kind of go back until I hit my launch page here. Let's take a look at Fish Creek. This is what Fish Creek should look like after Chapter 4. Notice different fonts, different layouts. We got little fish behind the menu items, right? It's not quite the same, not all that much different at the same time. Let's click through. There's services.
Something I noticed about the Fish Creek was that we didn't have those 7 images
Yeah.
in the resource.
You didn't have these images?
Yeah, Fish Creek, yeah. Some of the columns, I mean, I probably around it, but
Which image was not there?
the navigation images and
Oh, these images?
the fish logo behind it.
All right, let's take a look at the source code really quick and see which images they're using. All right.
Yeah,
So home gift. So those aren't in the zip file?
yeah, I had to read them over because we have big fish and little fish.
Okay. That's on me then. Okay, so let me get those for you. Or here's the other thing you can do is you can come to the website here, do a right click and save as. Okay. Yeah. And then, you know, that's the other piece. So what Brenda just mentioned is really kind of the right answer on this is you guys need to take the code from the inside cover of your book, go to the author's website, and you can download all those things. Because that's really where you're supposed to get them from. Okay. But Joe, would you do me a favor and send me an email to remind me to do that? To provide the Fish Creek images? Because I will gladly do that. I don't want to downgrade you guys on it. So the other thing is sometimes the images will be embedded here, you know, like what they're called. So you can see how I can look at the CSS files too. So not only can you check your HTML folks, but you notice that these things are linked up. So if you want to see how they do the CSS, just click the link and you can look at their CSS and how they did the CSS. All right. All right, so that's what these assignments should look like. I'll try to provide the files, and I'm sorry that if I had them incorrectly in there. You know, because what I did is I went to the end of the book and pulled the finished version out. So at some point they must change it. That must be what's happening. Now, like these menu items here, these are all graphics, and I consider that not really an optimal approach for a lot of reasons. But yet that works and it looks nice. So I'll get those images posted for you. All right. Any questions on this at all? You guys are okay? So I'm kind of giving you the answers. So those of you that haven't done the work yet, now you have an example to pull from. The only thing you really need to know is how to get to my launch page. Oops. Let's go forward a click. So once again, this is my launch page right here. So apollogtc.edu. My username is 5A's. And I do that on purpose because then when I look up the user account, it's way at the top. It's kind of like, you know, looking up AAA in the phone book or something. It comes up at the top. But this is what I'm hoping that you do for your launch page. It does not need to be anything fancier than this. You can follow my format exactly if you want. If you want to make it look really fancy and put CSS and all that stuff on it, that's on you. I'm not looking for that. You know what? Because the reality is, it's just links to a bunch of pages. But could you imagine, though, if you have multiple classes here? And so here we got Web Programming 1, and then later you add another class, and you have everything chronicled? How useful that is? Because then you'll go to yourself, hey, that's kind of like that one thing we did week 5 in this class. And like, where the heck is it? Well, here it is. Right? So you don't have any disk space limitations, really, on Apollo. Until we run out of disk space, but we have plenty. So you should be able to put all the stuff that you do for your whole program in there without any issue. That's an excellent question. So the question was, once we graduate, how long will our stuff stay on there? Provided that we keep Apollo active, which would be our goal, for as long as we keep the machine active. Here's been our pattern though. When I started here, we were using a server called Mercury. It wasn't managed by our department, it was managed by the information systems component of Gateway. They just gave us server space on it. They would create the accounts and all that. And then the software program graciously offered us space on their IBM iPower system, and we loaded a partition with Linux and had our own web server called Chronos. And actually, Chronos was down for a while, but it is back up, thankfully. So the URL for that is Kronos, and this is the Chronos homepage. This one was done by Christian, right? And so the students that were in our program between 2015 through roughly 2017-ish, mid-year, all of their stuff is on this server and still is. We're not putting any new accounts on here, but any of our students that graduated, their stuff is still up and active. Some of them are using it for portfolios. We still have databases running on here and stuff, and there's some really nice examples, and we thought, why should the machine be retired if it still works? And our plan is if we ever replace Apollo, that we wouldn't put it to sleep, we would just let it keep running, unless the hardware fails. Okay, so indefinitely would be the short answer, or until the school makes us turn it off. But since we're under the control of it now, our department actually runs the machine. It's right across the hall in the server closet. We have no plan to shut it down, as long as it keeps working.
And as long as you get parts of those parts failed, correct?
Right. Well, these are pretty high-end servers, Cordy. So, we have like service agreements and stuff. Yeah, I don't think that'll be a problem, honestly. All right. So that ends our launch page video, and hopefully you guys